There we are. Aaron, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I always enjoy catching up with you and appreciate your insights. It's one of the cool things about doing this show is I normally get a couple minutes before we go live to get caught up and pick brains and seeing where the world's going. And you're always gracious with your answers, so I appreciate that very much.
It was fun.
Yeah. All right. So we normally try to kind of take a step back and figure out how the heck you got to this point because you have a pretty fascinating background, pretty fascinating career, fascinating outcomes with previous ventures. But I guess take us back to when you realized that tech was your thing. How about that? Let's start there.
I have an interesting story there. I'm one of the first folks that I know that actually got to be what they wanted to be when they grew up. I just didn't realize how bad it was. So as a kid growing up, I wanted to be a Unix system administrator. How many kids wanted to administer Unix devices? And so um, I got to do that. One of my very first jobs was doing Unix admin work. I didn't realize, though, that all I would be doing is adding printers and users all day to Unix systems. Um, so I would say that's like when I really first started tech. My entire career has been tech. Um, I would say I wasn't running businesses. I was always like 30 levels down in the management structure of large companies, doing either IT or security or both.
Did you did you prefer being down in the bowels and hands on and then I guess when was that pivot to when that light bulb moment kind of occurred and said, hey, I got something to say here.
I wouldn't say I preferred it. I liked building products, and if
Mm.
this was a serial thing that I've noticed in my history, is I would work for a company, build a product, and then get yelled at. Um, and so now I'm just doing it, but in my own companies.
Yeah.
Um, it What made me realize that I needed to become an entrepreneur was my the birth of my son. So my son was born with a very severe heart defect. He was born with something called hypoplastic left heart syndrome,
Mhm.
and he was born with half a heart. And so that really taught me a ton about how short life is and how we only have one of these things. And I was working for a large financial institution doing cybersecurity, looking at my 401k every month to hopefully someday retire. And then that really taught me that the entire system was set up for me to hope that I get old someday, to finally enjoy my life. And I wanted to be able to enjoy my life now because life is so fleeting. Uh, my son uh, showed me that. And that had me start to take all the risks I needed to be able to live my life and create products.
Wow, that's powerful. I mean, to have that, experience, that clarity, and that sets you on this path is pretty. It's pretty incredible. So, what was the first? What was the first idea? What was the first? Taking step off the ledge opportunity for you.
The first idea that had me uh, leave the man was a cyber threat intelligence product, so far out of the MSP space and what MSPs even talk about today. Uh, but myself and my team built a cyber threat intelligence solution that was used by all the the major banks. When it comes to the success of the product was very successful. I just was not uh, feeling fulfilled in my product creation venture, and moved on from that idea.
Wow, what was about it? What about it wasn't, I guess, fulfilling? I mean, because it sounds like you're doing some pretty incredible things and solving some pretty, interesting challenges. But what about it was just not doing it for you?
I was a member of threat intelligence sharing communities in the financial services industry. And
Mhm.
what I found out was that most of the members there weren't large banks. Large banks were like 5 to 10% of the member base, and the other 90% were regional and community banks, and they didn't have the means or the funds to purchase the products needed to do what I was building. And so then that showed me that that was reality. The large banks weren't reality. Everybody else was. And so I wanted to go do that and help the smaller companies. And that was the creation of Perch.
Wow, that's so interesting. So I remember similar scenarios would be involved in the ISACs, or some forums, some groups, in the DC area, and these were more maybe federal government oriented groups versus just straight financial. But yeah, the vast majority of the folks that were in the room or on the calls, at the the morning breakfasts were the smaller guys. I guess they were there to learn, but they couldn't afford the solutions that the larger contractors, the prime contractors, the agencies, were buying or building. And so that's interesting. I think I had a very similar kind of light bulb moment um, early on with the development of ID Agent, because we were going after, our customer base was federal and DoD and large states and enterprise, but then we had pivoted into the MSP space, and partly like not knowing what we're getting ourselves into, but understanding that there's, very immature slice of the marketplace that needed to be served. And so it
Think
took us
of
a while to figure it out.
enterprise. Yeah.
Mm.
I just like down market because it's real. It's like
Yeah.
real business.
Wow.
Think of enterprise, large companies, say Fortune 500. They don't buy things or necessarily do things because it provides them value. They buy things and do things because they have a project for it.
Wow.
Um, and how do you build a product to ensure that your customers have a project for it? It's easier and more fulfilling to build a product because someone values it, and that's what occurs outside of Fortune 500.
Yeah, I'd love here. I'm going to pop up Mark's comment here because I think this is so spot on, right?
Yeah.
Cybersecurity poverty line. I mean, that is absolutely spot on there. So thanks, Mark. So you had this moment, this realization, call it aha, or kind of a pivot in mission or mandate, but then you went down the path of creating a really interesting and really awesome company called Perch. So take us through that process.
And by the way, hey Mark. So it's pretty starting a company from scratch, especially if you have a family, is extremely stressful, right? So I went from a really good paycheck and bonus to risking my mortgage and being able to eat and working out of an incubator space at a table shared with other startups. Super, super scary. Um, and at the same time fun because I got to build the initial team, and we've spent weeks on a whiteboard trying to figure out how we were going to enable these small to mid-sized financial services companies to use things like ISACs that you mentioned earlier, as well as healthcare companies that were in the same problem. And we're pretty successful at enabling them. And it wasn't just the technology, but also the go-to-market with the price of the product, for example, was right in their wheelhouse. The issue with pricing a product in a way that small to mid-sized companies can afford is it's almost too inexpensive for you to sell. Like, for example, we would talk with a community bank for 6 months to sell $500 a month in our cybersecurity solution. It would take us years to recuperate the sales costs to do that. And then that was our pivot to when we learned about MSPs at Perch about 2 years in. That was our pivot to the MSP space, and we never looked back.
Yeah, so many just awesome parallels. Things that are so relatable. Just on the personal side and kind of the, oh my gosh, taking that step off the ledge and from security to insecurity, and then to the experiences with the regional community banks, or the just those sales cycles. To your point, it's just interesting to see. So I've got another great comment here from Eric. Right, so many products focus on the enterprise space and big money that they're priced products in such a way that's unreachable by cottage and SMB brands, and that's spot on. I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of the big vendors end up ultimately bagging or failing, as they try to transition downstream. They built their businesses around enterprise and these longer sales cycles and price points, and it's just not tenable or sustainable down in mid-market MSP space. So you're starting out with that in mind, and building around that, then that's a hallmark of success. And so the early days, you got the whiteboard going on, you got the team trying to figure it out, and I guess is there any moment that stands out in your mind where he's like, man, not just we're onto something, but you're starting to get really good traction or velocity?
When revenue becomes predictable, that's when you really have the traction. And I would say within 6 to 12 months of doing business with MSPs. And it was so much fun. It made me want to do it again after Perch, because I've spent my entire career in the enterprise where everything was so project focused that it was so exciting to be able to do something that made people actually happy. And even to today, I'm running around the business saying, who are you going to make happy today? Who are you going to make happy? Because I'm still trying to wear off that project side.
What's great is that the way you came into the marketplace, and you're taking a seemingly, you're taking a complex challenge, complex topic, complex conversation, right? And you're translating it down to the marketplace that, I always talk about this maturity curve, right? This cybersecurity maturity curve in the MSP space. And you guys did, in my opinion, kind of arm's length, looking at you guys did, maybe just started with the branding, kind of the feel, but you guys, I think, did a heck of a job in that education, side of things, and making it relatable, understandable, and then building out a solution that allowed, it was built, for the sophisticated, but it also allowed, at the time when you have just a lot of people, a lot of MSPs, adding that next S in their MSSP, tag, you made it very, I think, understandable. And I think I assume that's one of the reasons why you guys grew so well, is that not just it was a great product, but it was the education that went along with it.
None of the stuff I do, I think, is complex. When I'm sitting around thinking of product ideas, I'm always trying to figure out how can I make the simplest product? Because the last thing I want to do is stress out over complexity. However, I will say that cybersecurity is not complex. The complexities behind it are probably brought to us by academia trying to justify research funding, and large enterprise trying to justify why a cybersecurity team needs to be 5,000 people in size. We do a lot more complex things in IT than we did in cybersecurity. Like, look at a TCP/IP packet. Like, that's really complex. But no one's sitting around talking about how hard networking is, because it's not cool to set up an academia research center around TCP/IP packets. Nor do they have teams of enterprise folks building them by hand. So we simply don't talk about it. Cybersecurity is easy, just like browsing the web is easy, and that's the approach that we took. Someone else mentioned that I really liked Eric's thing about the pricing again. And then Mark kind of touched on it a bit. The enterprise folks with the expensive products trying to move down market and the products are too expensive, that doesn't just hurt the consumer, it also hurts startups, right? The startups are driven to get to revenue so quickly that they have to sell to the large companies because the investors don't understand the business or technology. They understand the financials. And so if you're not bringing in a lot of revenue quickly, no matter how awesome your product is, it means it's not working and that people don't like it. And so startups are de-incentivized to charge, just a couple $100 a month because they go out of business. And we need to care about startups because that's where the innovation comes from, not the large businesses.
Agreed. So you've been a victim of my dog busting open my door here and interrupting our show here. So this is a show first. I apologize, but yeah, you're absolutely spot on about these pressures. I think Mark made another comment about the VC pressure and just going down that path into velocity and not having that that understanding. That's a whole nother, I guess, show or topic that we can go down rabbit holes with. But yeah, it's definitely a challenge because that definitely stifles innovation and it hurts the industry ultimately. So I'm like, so we can go way down that rabbit hole. So you had did great things with Perch, and then ultimately ended up selling that to ConnectWise, and I know you're there for a little bit, and then I guess had another light bulb moment, or so let's kind of transition to where you are today with Rewst. So how did Rewst come about? I have some maybe assumptions, but how did Rewst come about in solving these really interesting problems you guys are solving these days?
So RPA isn't new. A lot of the technologies that MSPs use come from the enterprise. And my background prior to Perch was something called security automation. So at Perch, I focused on my security side, and at Rewst, I focused on my automation side. And inside of automation, we were using RPAs 10 plus years ago in the enterprise, but still not in the MSP space. And that very much looked similar to SIM adoption in the MSP space. Like when I started Perch, SIM was like the most extremely mature cybersecurity product set that was out there, been out for 10 or more years. and had yet to really penetrate the MSP space. The same thing, and I'm noticing the same exact pattern with automation in the MSP space. And I happen to have experience in the automation space, so why not try to go build it? And it's something that interests me and I have fun with. And so that I want to be just like my whole thought process of why starting a startup, which is why wait until you're old to be happy with your life. I'm going to go do automation now and be happy now with what I'm doing. And so that had me go start Rewst.
Wow. So I love just kind of your approach, just on life, but just how to approach just the short time we have, to your point, on this earth, and going out and solving problems and doing things that make you happy. That's awesome. So what I think is cool, I was telling you just before we jumped on, is that I've seen you guys come on the scene and kind of heard about, RPA. I mean, knew about RPA, but heard you guys are coming in and kind of tackling these problems. And so I guess like any, good interview, I went out and started doing some more research. And to your point, the simplicity, what I love, there's a video up on YouTube that essentially an onboarding. It's just taking somebody through how you would normally onboard an employee, right? First, you're going out to the PAX 8 and you're checking if you have licensing, and then you're looking at your Duo, and I forget the list, but it was so a day in the life of an MSP, right? And that challenge that they're trying to solve day in and day out, and then the video just shows the 5 clicks that you guys have to take to automate that entire process, right? And just make it that much easier. And so I was thinking, I had assumptions about how you went down this path, and obviously your background, being in both security and orchestration automation. But, I imagine because you were solving complex challenges, making it easy, but then it's creating a lot of noise, right? It's creating a lot more work, and that there's the opportunity to simplify things. So I think I was kind of tracking how you got to this point, but I guess take us through, some of the use cases with Rewst and how you see this having an impact on the MSPs.
We started the discussion around client user ad because very early on in product development, it's difficult, and I learned this prior to Rewst, that if you talk to your prospective clients too early in the product development process, they may not fully understand what you're talking about, and they may inadvertently talk you out of building the right thing. And so with that, we tried to start bringing MSPs into the conversation when we had something to show on the screen, because some of our early automation discussions went very poorly because folks were thinking about automation in the task mindset, which is, I've already written on my PowerShell that runs on my RMM. I can already do that, versus the process, which is pulling in all of the third-party integrations and all the other steps beyond just executing the script via the RMM. And so once we could show it to them, the light bulb started to go off. And the first thing that the MSPs talked about was how big of a pain in the butt onboarding and offboarding their clients' users were. But since then, we've had our most successful clients are investing their own time to build automations on the platform to do things that we've never even thought of doing before. Like I think the one video we posted on LinkedIn just a few days ago about automatically removing phishing or spam emails from folks' inboxes using Rewst. Like, I never thought of that. And that's what's cool about building a platform that's like an automation language, is you get to see new ways that your clients are using your product every day, and that's super exciting. The one recommendation I make is the more effort you put into automating, the more time, the more value, the more process stability you'll have, the less errors you're making will come to you. Just like the more time you spend onboarding one of your MSP clients, the better the long-term engagement will be. The more time you spend trying to better your business's process, the more money you'll save in the long run.
Yeah, no, that's yeah, so spot on. I'll jump to a question that Ian has here real quick. Let me pop this one up. And it says, a relatively young vendor in MSP space, how do you balance your go-to-market efforts and investments between leveraging larger disty and indirect resellers and your own demand gen or direct selling? Yeah, kind of a big question there. But any thoughts around that?
I like to, at least initially, let's say the first 3, 6, 12 months, I would focus not on disty or resellers, and just focus on selling directly to who your customer is, because you're still trying to figure out how to sell it. If you can't sell it, the disties aren't going to be able to sell it. And so once you get really good at describing the value of your product in a way that the opportunity can understand, then you start engaging the resellers and disties, and so you can teach them how to do it. And even that, I am so wanting to be in control of our own destiny. Just because you have a distributor selling something for you doesn't mean you can't be on the call with them, trying to be in a support fashion to make sure they're successful. One of the early things I learned about business is there's no part of your business that's more important than the other part of the business. Like if you're extremely focused on the tech and not on the sales, then you will flounder. If you're too focused on the sales and not on the tech, you'll flounder. So trying to have an equal focus. I'm not going to rely completely on distributors as a startup. And if I do, I'm going to help enable them, maybe even put my own team on the call to make sure they're successful.
Yeah, very smart. I think I couldn't agree with you more that especially early days, and it's a challenge when you get to scale, but the early days, just having that, that close interaction with the customers, right? It helps you obviously product roadmap, it's relationship, it helps with pivot, and what's cool to your point, right? You build a platform where it's almost going back to like the old, I don't know why Xenos is like coming into my head, and maybe because they were based out of Annapolis, but old open source days where it's about the product, but it's about to be making it open and then encouraging the community to come in and build solutions. And so it's not a one-to-one, but you have a platform where people are coming in and doing some pretty cool things. And I saw one of the press releases that were out there. We talked about just different areas you guys could explore, or you might be on roadmap now, and some of it was around billing, automation, reconciliation. And so you think about what you could automate and the problems that you can solve with this type of solution. It's pretty mind-boggling, right? And then I promised I promised myself I wasn't going to go down this whole chat GPT thing, but what you guys have built is it's a platform to I'm trying to come up with like a nice little soundbite, but it's really could revolutionize the MSP's business, I think front to back.
You mentioned ChatGPT, so let me talk about AI for a second.
Damn it.
That's what keeps me up at night, because what keeps me up at night is industry distractions.
Yeah.
Now, there are places where AI works great, and will continue to improve there. Um, a good test on whether or not AI will be good at something is whether or not human intelligence has mastered it first. And it's, at so many times, I really saw this in the cybersecurity space 3 to 5 years ago. This whole onslaught of AI tools, and I'm sitting here thinking, like, humans don't even know how to do this. How are they training machines how to do this? And so when we get these industry distractions, like, what keeps me up at night is potentially customer demand to go build something
Yeah.
that uh, is only to meet their demand and not to actually provide them value. So a good test is, if there's no human intelligence, you can't do artificial intelligence. And right now in the automation space, until we're perfect at being able to describe all the automations we need, um, we shouldn't dabble in AI. Once we understand how to build automations really quickly, really easily, anyone we could ever imagine, you better believe I'm jumping into AI head first and getting that into the platform.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, it's, yeah, you have to temper the distraction. There's, looking into it and, looking at ways it could be levered, but then, that's kind of a side project, right? And to your point, it's like, don't get distracted from the core. And, what you guys, yeah, it's just, yeah, I agree. Maybe there's probably somebody internally at Channel Program who I say, don't get distracted too much. Hopefully he's watching this, because I know he wants to go down that whole process. But anyway, I better put these up here real quick. And I think Ashley's got a couple jokes here, right? Aaron knows the importance of automation's no yoke, and then followed up with, what do you say, he's cracking the code of RPA value for MSPs. And so, well played. Thank you very much. We've got another message from Eric as well. The opportunity for brand to add value and bring brand awareness around your product without selling to large audiences has never been more within reach. I totally agree. And no longer need DIST or define PMF or scale. So I think Eric's got a certain feeling about that. There we go. Any more comments here? So looking forward, right? I mean, you guys have, again, just a wonderful platform, and I think just the value and the impact that you're going to have on the community moving forward is just, I think it's going to be immense. So what does Rewst look like in a year from now or 2 years from now? What's the future hold for you? I mean, it's hard. It's not fair to ask that question when you've got so many amazing things in the short term that you're gonna have to conquer. But like, what do you guys look like in a year or 2 years from now?
Probably completely different. And startup speed, I feel like 1 week is 1 month. And we've got a couple large, unannounced, unreleased changes to the company and changes to the product that we'll be announcing and releasing over the coming months, for a pivot that we started maybe 4 months ago on the platform. When we initially went to market, we thought no one would want to automate anything, that they'd want us to do it. And 90+% of our users want to be the ones doing it. And so we've been spending all our time enabling now our clients to build automations. And so there's changes that we're making within the company to help enable our users that we'll be announcing over the coming month or two. And then some product features that are very large as well. So I'm hoping that we look completely different. Now, the culture, I want to remain the same. We're quirky, eccentric. If you work with my team, the what we call the ROC, or the Robotic Operations Center. We engage, publicly in Slack and Discord. We have our own Slack and Discord for Rewst. All our users are in there, chatting together, helping each other. We have an all users call, which we do every Friday. Every one of our customers gets on a call together. And it's getting larger and larger. We are closer to 100 people on this call than we are at 0 on a weekly basis. And I would like to encourage all other MSP vendors to try to do the same. Think how transparent you are as a vendor if you give a public sounding board to one customer in front of all your customers.
I mean, I think that's a hallmark of a great company. And I think the companies that have done extremely well in this space, the ones that have scaled and the ones that every MSP knows and admires, does exactly that, right? They lean into the enablement. They lean into, the community and the conversation, and that's hard to do. And it's hard to do for just about any vendor, right? Because there are so many different outlets for commentary. I'm just about to say complaint, the Reddits of the world. But if you create forums that encourages the dialogue, then you had a lot of that off of the past. And I think that's one of the biggest issues with vendors these days, right? Is that especially as they're scaling. We talked about that earlier, right? As you scale, sometimes it's harder to know the customer on the other end of the line personally and have that relationship. But if you build this type of community and collaboration early on, right, then that kind of brings them into the fold, right? And they're helping to shape their roadmap, and it becomes a very, symbiotic relationship. So that's well done. I think more vendors should take note of that and lean into it, because I think that's, again, a hallmark of a great company. So I want to be respectful of your time. You've been very gracious to take us through kind of the past, the present, and the future here. Any parting words for the audience? Any advice or things they should be thinking about?
Automation requires a level of investment and education. Think about it when PowerShell first hit the scene from Microsoft. Folks did not know PowerShell immediately. They weren't born with that knowledge. You had to learn it, or you had to hire your way into the knowledge. But at the end result, you were better able to run and perform work with your RMM. The same goes with automation. You need to learn automation, spend some time with it, attempt to do it, and you will then see the fruits of your labor in better processes and time savings. So instead of focusing all our interactions of automation just being at the RMM, let's do it throughout the entire business. And then back to how I started it. If you're thinking about starting a business, there's never a good time. So go do it. If you're thinking about all the risks involved and you don't want to because it's too risky, then don't start a business, because those risks will never go away. Try to be happy and live life, and then eat some Skyline chili, as Mark Clancy mentioned.
Yeah, I guess I'm out of the loop on this one. So Mark's Skyline chili questions. I guess I have to indulge it now. What is that an inside thing, or?
It's a cult. It's the cult food of my companies. It's everyone has a love-hate relationship. There's no one in the middle of Skyline. Unfortunately, to most of my employees, they're on the hate side of Skyline. But it's a fun chili concoction with a lot of cheese and hot sauce. It's basically it's it's come from the sky. It could not get more of that chili. It's awesome.
Is that a Tampa specific thing, or?
No, it's what's even more bizarre is it's a Cincinnati, Ohio thing. What the reason why it's a Florida thing is apparently, and it's only in Ohio and Kentucky-ish areas, is because I think some of the owners wanted to retire in Florida. And so they put like a half a dozen of these Skyline chilies randomly throughout Florida. And I just had always lived near one, apparently.
All right. Well, next time I'm down there, which I think is next week or the week after, I'll have to look for one. So, and I'll report back on what side of the fence I'm on. Well, hey, again, thank you so much for taking some time. And I guess last question: where can people find Rewst? What's the best way to connect with Rewst or yourself?
Rewst.io. Check it out. There's a contact us button if you want to chat with us. If you want to not chat with us and just see what folks are doing with the platform, follow us on LinkedIn. We try to post at least one video a week. And I think we're almost at 100% of those videos are from our weekly all users call. And so you'll hear users chatting away and talking about the automation that someone is showing off on there.
That's awesome. Well, great. We'll do that. We'll make sure we drop these in the show notes and all that. So with that, thank you very much for your time here. And it's been a great conversation. And we'll hopefully see you here in person at sometime in the near future.
So definitely. Thanks for having me.
You got it. Thank you very much.